Hey guys, so in this video we're going to look at the Html-Webpack plugin and how it can streamline our development process and also just help us remove any last bit of unnecessary code in our project here. So if you remember in the last video we checked out the dev server and how to set that up, and the main advantage again with that was now that we can serve our bundles in memory, right? So we're not actually writing any files to disk anymore with Webpack. So with normal Webpack and Webpack Watch, we're building these bundle files here in our distribution folder. Now we can just totally delete them. Okay, just gonna delete these two here. Right. Okay. And what that allows us to do now is, first of all, we can just run npm start now. And again, that's webpack-dev-server, and it'll still run our website just fine. The index.html can still find those bundle files, okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to add the Html-Webpack plugin. So first things first, as always, just do npm i-d. This is Html-Webpack-plugin, okay? So the way to set this up is, first thing we want to do is, now that we're going to be using this plugin, we can remove this last file here that's hogging our distribution folder up, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a save as here, and instead of having it in here, I'm going to put it in source. So basically I'm just moving my index.html to source, okay? So now it's in here, and now the magic of it is I can just totally delete my distribution file or folder. Okay, so now the only thing we have is source, which is the only thing we should need, right? Because source is where we're developing from. Distribution is just for when we're running in production, right? So first thing I can do now is delete those script tags there, because what's really cool is the Html-Webpack plugin will take care of all of that for us, okay? So, now in here, the last thing we added was dev server. So the next thing we can do is plugins. Okay. And plugins is actually an array. You can have lots of plugins in your setup. There's lots of different ones out there, and I suggest you experiment with all of them because some of them are pretty cool. But in this one, we're going to look at the Html-Webpack plugin because it can do some things that pretty much every project you would probably want to happen. Okay. So first thing we need to do is require it. So we'll do HTML Webpack plugin. And of course, you can name it whatever you want here. This name is a little bit long. So in here, it's requiring it by the module name, which is HTML-Webpack-plugin. Okay. Now, the plugins are actually constructor functions. So what you have to do is call new on them and to HTML-Webpack plugin, whatever you called it up at top, and just invoke it. Okay, so what's cool is if you run HTML-Webpack plugin blank, so with no arguments, right? If I was just to run npm start right now, okay, and I go to this link, so what had just happened? Okay, so we got a blank index.html page here, right? There's nothing in here. If I inspect this source, nothing. But you noticed, right? It injected my two scripts. I got those two alerts, right? And if you notice here, we've got script, one script tag here that says app.bundle.js and about.bundle.js. Crazy, right? So what Webpack plugin did for us is it automatically injected our code into this blank index.html. Okay, so by default, if you invoke the Webpack plugin without any arguments, it will set up a blank new index.html for you and just plop these in here. Okay, so this is really great, really fast. You don't need an index.html anymore, and you can remove your distribution folder entirely. Okay, but now in most cases, right, you're probably going to want to put some stuff in your index.html, whether it's as little as like, a app component tag, or maybe, just some basic markup, right? you're going to want to probably put something in there. So that's why we have this still, right? So let's say I need to have this h1 in. So what we can do here is we can specify a template, okay? And template, it takes in a path to wherever you want your template HTML to be. So I basically want Html-Webpack-Plugin, instead of using a blank slate HTML file, I want it to use my file here as a template. So I'm going to do path.join, just do dir name source and index.html. Okay, so I'm going to close this out and run again. Now let's see what we get. Okay, so now you see this time, instead of loading a blank HTML, I got an my template, right? So that's all you really need to do to set that up. Okay. The next thing we want to look at is by default, you can specify other places to inject your scripts in. By default, it will inject it into the body because that's typically where you would inject JavaScript. But just so you know, we're basically doing this. There are some other options, but that is by default. And then hashing. So hashing you might not need to worry about, but it's nice just to have it. So this is for like cache busting. And the cool thing with hashing, right? Like if you were to do hashing like I talked about in the file name up here, right? It might get a little crazy because you remember before this, right? We were manually specifying the bundle names, right? So you'd have to like change those tag names every time you would build, right? So with here, we're putting the hashes in the HTML-Webpack plugin, okay? So what this is going to do is it's going to hash the files for us to the file name, and then it's going to automatically inject them. So we don't have to worry about doing that, okay? So now if I view page source, you see I get app.bundle.js, question mark, a bunch of random characters here, right? So doing that manually would be kind of annoying. The Webpack plugin takes care of that for us, okay, which is awesome. Now, this is all you pretty much need for a basic setup, right? If you're running one index and you need a basic template, you're good to go. But remember that our app structure here right now, right? We're setting ourselves up for success for the future, right? We have two different entries for two different bundles, which so far I've been putting in the one index. But ideally, you probably want to build these two bundles for two separate pages, two totally separate applications possibly, right? So what we can do here is that, this is just an array of plugins, right? So we can just call the same thing. Okay. So what I can do here now is just copy over these settings, right? Because I still want to use the same template for the time being. Again, for this second one, you can specify a totally different template. That's totally up to you. And what I'm going to do here is in the second one, I'm going to give it a file name. So by default, right, it'll come out to index.html, okay? But if you give it a file name property here, you can name it whatever you want. So in our application structure, we're saying we have an app and an about. So let's go down here and call this about .html. Okay, and here we want it to remain index. Okay, so if I restart, okay, so now what's going on here? Okay, so if you notice, I'm still getting both alerts, right? This is my home page or my app page, right? And now if I type in about.html up here, I'm still getting both alerts. Okay, that's cool. So now I have two HTMLs here, but not very useful, right? Because I want to split these bundles out. So what you can do is chunks. And chunks is a little confusing because it's like there's the word bundle and chunks, and it's all the same thing. So pretty much the chunks I want to use here, or the bundles, right, in my about page, I just want to use about. Okay, and notice I'm using an array here. If you add more bundle names, they would both get injected. Okay, but in this case, I only want about. Okay, and then for my main index, right? Chunks, I only want app. And again, right here, I'm just specifying the name of the bundle, which is, again, determined by the key, or the property type, or property name, sorry. So let's rename that, or restart. Okay, so now we're on about. I get the about alert and nothing else, right? Let's inspect this page source. So now you see on my about HTML, it's only injected the about bundle. And if I go to just flat, interesting. It's injected. Oh, I didn't refresh. Okay, so in here, right now we're at the home page, or whatever you want to call it, the app page, and it's only injected app bundle. Okay, so this is a really great way to kind of just streamline things. Now I'm all referencing from one index that's just kind of there. I don't have to write a whole bunch of index files. You can, of course, obviously, if you need to, for different templates. And the greatest thing is I can totally delete my distribution folder, right? So I don't have stuff, first of all, taking up space on my hard drive, even though it's probably not that much, but on a big project, it could get out of hand. And also, you know, if you're worrying about, you know, Git and like versioning those files, you know, that all that headache goes away. So that's pretty much it. Again, there's some other properties and cool things you can do with the Html-Webpack plugin. For example, like there's exclude chunks, which is exactly what it sounds like. You can just make enter the names of the bundles you don't want in that particular index HTML, and it'll take care of everything for you. Cool. So hope that was informative and helpful. And in the next video, I will go over the different dev tool or source map settings. Cool. Thanks, guys.